Good evening. Happy Thursday once again, and welcome back to the Man Cave. It's that time of week. It's time for live from the Man Cave. Jeff, how's it going in Florida?
Dreary and cool.
And Tanya, hanging in from
Yes.
upstairs.
Yeah.
Oh, it's my favorite time of the week. Once again, it's bourbon night here in the Man Cave. And Jeff, you having a drink with us tonight?
Yes, I am. I went out and splurged and got me some more Heaven Hill.
Did you?
Oh yeah.
Good times. Tanya, you got the coffee flowing up there?
No, I'm having tropical punch tonight.
Oh
Come on,
man,
with that
hardcore
coffee.
stuff.
Yeah, watch out.
I'm going to get into one of my favorite cheap bottles. This benchmark foolproof. I haven't been into this one in a while, and it's my favorite sub $30 bottle of bourbon. Whoops, that trying to drop the lid on the floor. But we're going to get a nice healthy splash of this. For those of you that might not be familiar with Benchmark, Benchmark is the bottom line stuff from Buffalo Trace. It's the same grain bill as Buffalo Trace. It's the 4 year stuff, and
I thought it was a
they've got
runoff.
about yeah. It's the 4 year. I think it's aged 4 years. I can't remember for sure what the aging is on it, but it's the same grain bill as Buffalo Trace, which moves on up to Eagle Rare, Stag, and all that stuff. It's the same bourbon. It's just handled differently. But they make about 7 different iterations of this, which I have one of each of those bottles. And out of all of them, the bottled in bond one and the foolproof one are my favorites. And this has gone up since I bought this, but I think I paid $23 for this, and it's worth every penny of it. And I think I've got 2 more bottles of it. I got it while the getting was good. I don't expect to be able to buy that all the time, but I've only had Stag once in my life, and the reason I wanted to try this bottle of bourbons because I wanted to see if I could uh, taste some Stag in the background of this, because this is basically Stag, but it's not aged out like Stag is. It's not as old, and it there are some similarities in the two, but the Stag is definitely a superior uh, iteration. And once again, it's hard to come by. But this benchmark, if you like foolproof bourbons and can get your hands on a bottle of this, I highly recommend it because, in my opinion, it's as good as a lot of bottles that I get that cost twice as much. Uh, Jeff, have you had that one yet?
Nope.
Have you seen it anywhere?
Yeah, it's usually come by at Total Wine.
You should try it sometime
Hmm.
if you can. It's definitely you. I know you don't typically do the foolproof stuff, but I'd give it a shot one time for the price. And then if you don't like it, it's a great cooking bourbon. So, what are you doing?
I'm rubbing my Heaven Hell because I
Well,
love it.
cheers,
Salute.
everybody. Oh,
That's good stuff. That'll put hair on your chest.
this has one similarity to the Heaven Hill. It's got some of that dark cherry.
Mm.
It's not quite as pronounced as the Heaven Hill. What I would really like to find at some point is some of whatever Heaven Hill's barrel proof stuff is. I don't know what it's called, or I've never seeked any of it out, but I would like to try that.
I
So,
love the black cherry notes in the background of
yeah.
this Heaven Hill. I mean, it
So,
just.
anyway, we're going to get started here in just a second. I want to thank all of you guys once again for contributing. I'm getting somebody that's making contributions of some amount to the project here every week. I don't think I've had a week go by yet that somebody hasn't made a contribution, and I really do appreciate that. And like I said, we're using that money to pay for the software that we use to run this live stream, and then we are, if there's any left over, we put it towards things that we are doing or showing here on the live stream. And I had a little extra last week, and I put some of that towards a whole strip loin that I bought to work on this steak sauce project. I'm getting some feedback again here. Tanya, will you mute your mic again? I don't know where that's coming from. It's not Tanya this time. Okay. If anybody else is hearing that, let me know. I don't know where it's coming from.
I don't know. I don't hear it.
And then
I was hearing it up here.
Yeah. Jeff, turn your mic off for just a second. Let's see if we can isolate this problem. Yep, there it went. It went as soon as Jeff turned his mic off. We're getting some feedback somehow, Jeff. I don't know how it's picking it up. Your mic's picking up the audio somehow or another. Yeah, Russ, that's what it sounds like. It sounds like some birds chirping in the background. That's what I was picking up on as well.
All
It's
the
not
cats
the
are
cat.
in another room.
Yeah, but anyway, yes, it's been a cold week here. We have had we've had an entire week since Monday where the temperature hasn't been above freezing, and I know that's not abnormal for my audience that's north of here, but it's pretty abnormal for my area. So I decided to try to take advantage of some of that this week. So Tanya, we'll bring you back in a little bit. Okay. Jeff did some cooking this week that we need to look at.
Yep, I fired up the Kamado.
Let's see here.
Had to show
All
the
right.
Kamado some love. So
Kamado
everybody's got their own cold weather comfort food, be it Brunswick stew, chili, chicken and dumplings. Mine is crawfish gumbo.
Mm-hmm.
And believe it or not, you can make crawfish gumbo very easily on the Kamado Joe. So what you see here is my big stock pot, and I've got 2 quarts of chicken stock, a couple bay leaves, 2.5 pounds of okra, celery, 28-ounce can of diced tomatoes, Worcestershire sauce, and a little Creole seasoning. And you bring that to a boil and let it cook for about 20 minutes, get the celery and whatnot softened.
And you don't have to remember all this because I did clip Jeff's recipe and we're going to show it up at the end. So all of that stuff's in the pot here.
Yep.
Okay.
And there it is, cooking away. You can see the pot's getting a nice little smoke on the side of it because I like to get a little bit of smoke.
How big a stock pot is that?
That one is my 5-gallon stock pot.
Will the Kamado Joe close on that?
Sure will, buddy.
Really, a 5-gallon stock pot? That's 20 quarts.
Yep.
I didn't think you could close a Joe down on a pot that deep.
Yeah.
I'm
it's sitting down in there, so.
Yeah. So that's about 20 minutes in after it
Yep,
started
that's
boiling.
about 20 minutes in. Yep. And then to that, I had the filet powder, and that gives it, the kind of the brown look. It's still real saucy because I haven't made the roux yet.
This filet, something I'm not aware of.
Yeah.
This is something I got to learn about. I asked about that.
It's a Cajun thing. Okay, so here we are.
This is something I do know a little bit about.
Yeah. Here we are. We're starting the roux. And what's interesting about this roux is you have to do a dark red roux, which takes a lot of cooking over a high heat using peanut oil. And you've got to whisk this the whole time because if you don't and it scorches, you got to throw the whole batch out and start all over.
Right. Well,
so the secret to this is I bring the oil up to about smoking temperature, and I'll add 1/4 cup of flour to it. and it's going to foam up good. So you got to be careful and stir fast. And I'll let that come to the dark color that I like. Then I start adding the rest of the flour, and that seems to work out real well where you're not, uh, you have less of a chance of burning or scorching it.
Right. This is a in classical French cooking. This is what they call a dark roux, and
Yep,
it's very flavorful, and that I can
it
see
is.
where it's coming into play here. So let's have a look at the next picture.
Okay, next picture. For those of you who don't think you can make rice on a Kamado Joe, think again, because you certainly can.
So you've got your rice and your water in here, and it hasn't started cooking yet.
No.
How much rice is that? What's that? Is that a 14-inch pan?
Yeah, that's my 14-inch cast iron pan that I used.
Right. And that's when the rice is done.
Yep.
Do you put anything in that besides just water?
Just water and some butter. Because, I mean, this rice here doesn't have to pick up any flavor. It's going to get all its flavor from the gumbo.
Right.
So you don't need
And
to
then
be
I guess
muting gumbo.
you just put it all in there to finish it off. Did it
Well,
use all of that roux?
just about. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. A lot depends on um, how much water's in with your tomatoes, how much water you may be getting or liquid you may be getting out of your okra. Majority of the time, you have just a little bit left over, but
Right.
it thickens it up really thick. I mean, this is rib sticking good.
Right. It looks pretty thick. So you've got
It
a lot
is.
of servings there.
Oh yeah.
And here's the recipe for it. I'll leave that on there for a minute or so, and y'all can screenshot that, or you can come back after the fact and replay the video and come to this recipe. It's got the recipe for the gumbo and the roux project. The roux part of it's down at the bottom with the ingredients and the instructions for making that roux. And
No, we didn't talk about what the proteins that go in there. It's ham, andouille sausage, shrimp, and what I do with the shrimp. Now, if I was serving this at a restaurant, I would not cut my shrimp up. But because I'm not serving it at a restaurant, and I want to make sure I have enough shrimp to go through the whole thing, I'll cut the shrimp
yeah,
into like three pieces, and
right.
then your chicken breast diced up into bite-sized pieces.
I would probably, I've like I said, I've never made this before, but I would probably put my seafood in there at the end of the cook rather than the beginning of the cook.
It,
Do you
it
put
goes in
yours
at
in
the
at the
end.
beginning? At
No,
the
it goes in at
end?
the end. Yeah. After
Okay.
everything is cooked, then what I do is I thicken it next, and then after I thicken it, then I put
Right.
in my proteins.
Perfect. That sounds awesome. So you're going to be eating gumbo for a while now.
Yeah, I got some in the freezer. Like I say that's a 5 gallon pot. It was probably 3 gallons of
Right.
maybe 3.5 gallons of gumbo. I mean, it's got six pounds of meat in there, so
I admire you for
it's
doing that
hard.
on the Kamado. That's one of the things I shy away from on my grills is anything that's involved and involves boiling.
Yeah, it's all good.
I know it'll do it. I'm it's one of those things that I know I can and I have. I just don't prefer to do it that way.
Well,
And I know I
actually,
should.
actually doing the red roux on the Kamado was actually, I think, a little bit better than doing it on the stove because I had a more of an indirect heat using
Right.
the deflector in there,
Hmm.
and it didn't, you don't have that
I'm
direct flame
curious.
on the bottom of the pan.
I'm curious about what you were saying about getting that oil up close to the smoke temperature. I'm I'm
It's
I'm
peanut oil.
curious about how that doesn't burn the flour right away because that I don't know. It's something I'm gonna have to play with sometime. Whenever I'm making a roux, I'm never using oil. Usually, I'm usually using butter, and
Yep.
butter. The temperature of that's tempered by the water that's in the butter. It's not getting as hot as just oil by itself does. That would be a game changer. But I've made dark roux before, but for several different types of sauces that I've made. But the dark roux doesn't thicken as efficiently as a light roux, but it brings a deeper flavor. There's a trade-off between dark roux and light roux when it comes to flour and butter, or you can use any kind of fat, And that's another thing I noticed about that recipe. It used 1 cup of peanut oil, and it had 2.5 cups of flour. That's a weird ratio to me. I've never done one like that before. It's usually 1-to-1 on the stuff I do. Yep.
Well, I said this. If you look at that picture, you'll notice on that roux I had a very long-handled whisk. You definitely want a very long-handled whisk, because when you dump that flour in, it splatters up and it foams up. And then the other thing, when you start dumping that hot roux into your into the gumbo itself, it starts doing all kinds of crazy bubbling. So you got to stir quick.
Right. Did you do that in that cast iron pan? Which pan did you cook the roux in?
Stainless steel, one of the copper clad stainless steel pans.
Okay, pot. Like a skillet?
No, pot.
A saucepan?
Yeah.
Okay. It looks good. I can smell it from here.
I tell you what, anybody that I have served that to comes back for more. Yeah. That's why, if any of you guys out there like gumbo, you really need to try it. I guarantee you'll be making it a second and a third and a fourth time.
And for those of you that haven't made roux before, you got to try that at some point, because the aroma of the roux when it's coming together is just knock your socks off. You can smell the changes in the process as it goes. Once you start out with butter and flour, and to begin with, it has a floury aroma. It doesn't smell particularly great, but it starts to get a nutty flavor as you go, and it gets nuttier and darker. The darker the roux gets. It's really cool how the aroma develops on that while you're cooking it. It's really, I use a roux in my cooking class. Roux is one of the primary thickening agents of anything you want to thicken in classical French cooking. And European style cooking, it's a roux, which is a fat and a flour.
Yeah, we used to make big pots of roux, and it just sat there on the flat top, staying warm, and we used it as we needed it.
Well, the chef that teaches the classes that I took, he did a whole session on his prep day. He does a bunch of prep on Monday every week. Mm-hmm. And one of the preps he does is roux. He does light roux and dark roux, and he puts it in an ice cube tray and freezes it, throws it in his freezer. That way he's got it made. He's got it ready to go for anything he might need to use it for throughout the week. He can just get a ice cube of roux and throw it in his whatever he needs to thicken. And part of the reaction that makes the thickening work and work quickly is you want your roux to be on the opposite side of the temperature scale of whatever you're thickening. Like in his case, if he was using a frozen piece of roux, he'd have a hot liquid. But when if you're making the roux in the pan and then going to add your liquid to it, you want to add a cold liquid on top of the hot roux, and the temperature shock helps the process, and it's kind of interesting how that works. But it's
I don't know what the temperature is of this roux when you're making it, but I know it bubbles up really good. So I know I'm going to say you're pretty close to 300 degrees on that roux.
Well, the smoke point of the peanut oil is north of 450, which is what makes me curious about it. But anyway, it's something I'm going to try. I need to look at gumbo and see if I need to play with that, simply because it's something I've never done before, and I think it would be good. I think I could probably find something Tanya would like in that realm, depending on what kind of meats went in it. Tanya,
well, I say this one has ham, andouille sausage, ham, shrimp, crawfish, and chicken.
Tasso is a popular thing to go in in that, and I think Tanya would enjoy trying that at least. That would be be a very popular option.
And you can
So
use this, the top part of the recipe, you can use that as your base and then put in whatever protein you want. If you want to do andouille
mhm,
sausage or just ham or chicken. I
yep.
mean, you go to New Orleans and, there's 55 different ways of making gumbo.
Well, gumbo's kind of like meatloaf. You make it whenever you want to clean out your refrigerator.
Absolutely.
Whatever
Same
you've
with Brunswick
got can
stew.
go in there. Yeah, and Brunswick stew. That's what I was going to say. I've made Brunswick stew with 3 or 4 different proteins in it to get rid of something. And brisket, chicken. I know I've made Brunswick stew with brisket, chicken, and pulled pork in it. This week's Brunswick stew's only got pulled pork in it though, but we'll get to that here momentarily. But
Well,
I
that's where I
wanted
make
to,
my cottage pie. Use my
yeah,
leftovers for that.
I wanted to start out my week with some cold smoking. I wanted to cold smoke some cheese, so I went to the grocery store and I picked 4 different varieties of cheese to smoke this week, and uh, I've never smoked Munster before, so I said that might be worth trying because
It
Jeff
is.
Munster's a cheese I like to use on pizza
Mhm.
in lieu of mozzarella sometimes.
Really?
It's got yes, it's a very good cheese on pizza. It's a very good cheese for pizza. In fact, when I make Detroit style pizzas, I'll often use a blend of Munster and Havarti when I can't get Wisconsin brick cheese, which I can't get very frequently around here. But
Well, I
I've
like
smoked Colby.
Munster on
Say,
cheesesteaks.
yeah, right. But I bought three 8-ounce blocks of each of those, and I've smoked Colby Jack, cheddar, and Gouda before, but I haven't tried the Monster, so I'm curious to see how that pans out. So
You're gonna like
with the
it.
yeah, with the cold weather, I figured this is going to be a good time to do it. So I've got several of these tubes, and this is a 12-inch long, uh, hexagonal shaped pellet smoker tube that I have, and I really like this one because the hexagonal shape keeps it from wanting to roll around wherever you set it. The round ones are fine, but this one will sit where you put it. And you can get these on Amazon if you're interested in having some of these often come in a 2-pack with a 12-inch one and a 6-inch one for $20 or less, and they're stainless steel, and you fill them up with the same kind of pellets that you use on your pellet grill to make smoke. So here I've filled this one up with pellets, and I'm using my culinary torch, which I brought out here. I'll show you this when we get back full screen because this is something else that I think everybody would want to have around. I use that torch and you hold it on there for 30 or 40 seconds and get it burning with a visible flame. And once that visible flame's going, I like to let that visible flame go for 2 or 3 minutes to get those pellets properly ignited where you can blow them out. You can blow out the flame and then they'll just smolder until they're all gone. So I decided I was going to do my cold smoking inside the Lone Star grill this week. That Lone Star grill is real heavy, thick steel, and it's cold. So I set that pellet tube in the bottom of my Lone Star, and I went ahead and set it on a terracotta tray where it wasn't sitting directly on the bottom of the grill, where it can get airflow all the way around the pellets through those holes. And then I put the baffle or the heat shield back in the grill, and I put my top shelf back in there. And from there, I got my cheese unpackaged, and I put my cheese on a little wire rack where it's easier to just lift that whole thing in and out of the grill. And then I also don't have to worry about my cheese sitting on the grill grate and picking up any of the residue. I keep my grates fairly clean, but you'll still get a little black residue on your cheese if you set it on a grill grate that's not perfectly clean. So
Plus,
we
using
took
that, it's nice for when you put it in the refrigerator
yes
to
to let
cool
it
off.
right, and
Air
and
can
I did
circulate
that as
underneath.
well. Yep. So I took this outside and set it on the grill. We closed up the grill door, and I have this ThermoWorks Thermopop thermometer that lives out on my deck, And this is the little plastic sheath for that thermometer. So I just lifted up the pellet grill door and put that under there where the door is not making a good seal, where it lets more air in, because the objective is to keep it cool inside this grill. So we let it go. Oh, I included this picture. This is the culinary torch that I use. I use this thing for a lot of different things. I use it for browning something. If I want to brown the top of something, I use it for lighting starter cubes in my Kamado Joe. And these things are inexpensive also. And these butane cans, I bought a 12-pack of these when I bought this torch. And I think I've only used 2 or 3 of them in the several years that I've had this torch. This thing works great and it's cheap. So that's something else you might want to have around. Especially, this is the perfect tool for lighting those pellets in the pellet smoker tube. You need some sort of small torch to do that, and this is a good way to do it. A butane cigarette lighter or grill lighter won't get that going. You need something with a little bit of beef behind it to get those lit. Yeah. So I included this picture. I put my ThermalWorks RFX to work to where I could show the temperatures that I had at the end. This one was from the end of the 4 hours that I left that thing running. I left this cheese in the smoke for right at 4 hours, and the ambient temperature outside was still 26.5 degrees. 4 o'clock in the afternoon when I finished this up, and it never got up above 45 degrees inside the smoker. So that's perfect. That is a perfect situation for cold smoking cheese. And here you can see the cheese took on some color. I should have done a side-by-side picture where you could see the before and after the color change. The longer you leave it in the smoke, the darker it gets, but 4 hours is gracious plenty for me. And if you're getting warmer temperatures than 45 degrees inside your smoker, you can go for even less, because the warmer it is, the more smoke will accumulate on the cheese. So I took that and I brought that whole rack in, and I put it in my refrigerator for about an hour after it had been in the smoker to let that kind of acclimate and let it chill back down. And then I vacuum sealed each of those blocks of cheese. Now, those blocks of cheese need to sit for a while before you try to eat them, before you try to eat that cheese. And my minimum is 2 weeks. Some people will go less than that. Some people will say 4 or 5 days is enough, and it might be, but I know you definitely don't want to eat that cheese the day of or the day after you smoke it. It tastes horrible. Jeff, have you ever had cold smoked cheese quickly after it's been smoked?
I did an experiment and
Yeah.
I had it the next day, and it
Mm-hmm.
tasted like I was eating an ashtray. I had
Right.
it
It
the
tastes
second
horrible.
day. It still tasted like I was eating an ashtray. I had it the
Mhm.
third day. Still tasted. So I was trying to find that sweet spot of
Right.
what I felt was a real good flavor. And mind you, guys, John and I are in different temperature environments, and ambient temperature plays a big role in smoking cheese. The colder
Right.
you are, the longer you can smoke it. Down here in Florida, I can only go about an hour and a half on a smoke. Anything after that, it's inedible. But
Yep.
for me, I found when I smoke my cheese, I let it go in the refrigerator overnight for 24 hours to let it dry off. Pat it dry with paper towel, whatnot, if it has any sweat on it. And I found my sweet spot to be 3 weeks.
Right. I've had it as soon as 2 without any trouble, but the 6, even 6 weeks is even better. And that
Mhm.
stuff vacuum sealed like this with this chamber sealer, I will have no issues whatsoever keeping that for 6 or 8 months.
Yeah.
that stuff will be good for that long. And there's a lot of things you can do with smoked cheese. My favorite thing to do is just snack on it. I'll open up one of those packages and cut those 8-ounce blocks into 8 pieces, and I'll put them in a Ziploc bag in the refrigerator. And if I feel the urge to have a snack in the middle of the afternoon, I'll have a piece of cheese, and it's delicious.
It makes great
I've
grilled cheese sandwiches too,
Yeah, I've made mac and
and
cheese
smoked
with
mac and
this.
cheese.
Yeah, I've made mac and cheese with it. I've made cheese sauces with it.
Yeah.
Uh, Another thing you can do is you could cut these 8-ounce blocks in half before you smoke them, and you create more surface area that way if you want to get even more smoke on it. But this is a fun project, and the unfortunate thing about this project is most people want to do this in their grill. The grill is really the worst place to do it. There's only certain circumstances where it works well in a grill, and even when it's cold outside, the Kamado Joe is horrible at this because it retains heat so well. I forgot to I didn't I should have taken a picture of my pellet maze,
Mhm.
because let me get a picture of one of these here, because this thing, I've got this one as well. See if I can get this website up. Uh, it's a 5 by 8 inch maze, and I don't know why can't I get this to come up somewhere for me? Here we go. This you can see that this makes a little maze where you light one end of it, or you can light both ends of it if you want to. But it's when you have one of these, it's burning a smaller number of pellets. It's also creating a smaller amount of smoke. But my pellet maze, this thing will burn for nearly 12 hours. And it's burning a lot less pellets over that 12 hours also. So you can let it go longer. And this thing generates less heat than the tube does. That's one advantage of having one of these, is it does make less heat. But that thing still makes enough heat that if it's 35 degrees outside here, it's going to get up to 80 inside my Kamado no matter what I do. And that's higher than I like to be when it comes to smoking cheese. The best thing you can do if you really want to experiment with cold smoking cheese is get yourself a cardboard box, a big, I don't know where you'd find the biggest cardboard box you can find. Cut the bottom out of it and cut holes in the side, cut some holes in the top. Put one of these pellet tubes in it and get yourself a small table of some sort that'll fit underneath that cardboard box. Put your your pellet smoker in there and let it go. That won't retain heat very well. And if you've got holes in the side as well as holes in the top, it'll be drawing in cool air from the outside, and it'll keep your temperature in check. But like I said, the grill is the worst tool out there because grills are designed to retain heat. And Jeff, we haven't shown the pellet smoker you built. Jeff built me a cold smoker. I need to get that out and make some pictures of it and re-show that, or I need to dig up my old pictures of it. It actually almost retains heat too well. I need to add some holes to it, but it's got a high capacity. I could smoke 100 pounds of cheese in that thing, maybe.
You think?
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of made that a little big, didn't I? Well,
It's got a
I wanted to
lot
get,
of Rex.
I wanted to make sure it had enough airflow in it,
Yeah.
so I made it big. And see,
I
you
think
can
I'm
do
gonna add some airflow to it. I'm gonna add some holes to it.
you could actually cold smoke 8 briskets in it. I still have room
Yeah.
left over.
Yeah.
I want to see if I got a picture of it. I got rid of mine.
Mine's still in the shed out here, but it's I've cold smoked in it 10 or 12 times.
It's a great coal smoker, but I found out, that my mix and bark with that thing being double insulated,
Hmm.
that does a decent job of, re, you know, when it's cold
The
out, smoking.
something I haven't tried yet. The Lone Star pellet grill has a cold smoke mode where it fills the pellet hopper 3/4 of the way full of pellets, and it gets it lit, and then it just puffs air into it periodically over a period of time. I haven't tried that mode on it yet. I think it's probably still too hot for cold smoking cheese, but I might try it sometime. Just or try running it anyway since I haven't done it. But the Camp Chef Woodwind Pro that I had has a fan only mode, which I wish the Lone Star had, because then you can put a fan in there, or then you can put your pellet tube in there, and it's got a fan that's circulating the smoke, which keeps the smoke real even inside there as well.
Well, that's what I thought about adding to that cold smoker, a muffin fan on that back
Yeah.
end. That would push through a big volume of air.
Well, like a PC fan, you
Yeah,
know,
that's a muffin fan.
one of those 6-inch diameter power supply cooling fans. I think they're, what are they, 6 volt or 12 volt? I don't know what they are, but they're pretty easy to power, and they're not hard to deal with. So anyway, that's the cheese. Jeff, I don't think a Weber kettle would work well at all because of how small
No,
it is. The
it would
smaller
retain too much heat.
Mike, it'll hold. You can keep it for 6 to 8 months in the fridge, but if you make this, it's not going to last that long.
Mm.
I've never had any.
The only way that I would use a Weber grill, and I don't even know if this would work with it, is if you had the venom hooked to the bottom of that thing and you open that thing up wide open, put your pellet tube in the bottom and then set that thing for like 450 degrees, which it would never ever reach, but it would just be pushing so much air volume through it.
Yeah,
It may work under those circumstances.
Bandit. My favorite one's the extra sharp cheddar. I like the cheddar better than any of it. The Gouda's really good, and also, as you can see, when I'm cold smoking cheese, I don't buy the expensive cheeses. It's kind of like cooking with bourbon. I don't cook with expensive bourbon, and I don't smoke expensive cheeses.
I like Monterey Jack.
Monterey Jack's good. Pepper Jack's good. Also, I didn't do any of that this time around, but I'm curious to see how this Munster comes out.
You're
But
gonna like it. I like the Munster.
I like the sharp cheddar. And Jeff, for what it's worth, the last year I cold smoked some of that English coastal cheddar from Costco. Don't do that.
No, I made that mistake too. It just doesn't take a good smoke. I don't
Well,
know what it is
that
about it.
that
It just
cheese
didn't
is a
taste
little
good.
crumbly, and it tastes good, but it's crumbly, and it gets even more crumbly when you smoke it. Hang on, I
just
gotta
wasn't
get
a fan
plugged
of it.
into. I gotta get my battery in here, or get plugged back into power. Hang on. There we go. I just got a battery alert. Don't want to do that. Okay. Mike, Swiss is pretty good. Mozzarella is good also. I've smoked Swiss before. Let me get Tanya. Tanya, what else have I smoked that I haven't talked about? What kind of, have I smoked any cheeses that we haven't mentioned?
What all have you mentioned?
Well,
It's
I've
Thursday. My
mentioned
brain's gone.
I've
I know
mentioned the
you've done the
cheddar.
sharp cheddar.
I've mentioned I've done various cheddars. I've
Yeah.
done Swiss. I've done Havarti. I've done Munster. Or Munster's new this time around. I've
Yeah.
done Colby Jack. I've done Colby. I've done
Gouda.
Gouda, and
We
we've
used to do
done
Gouda a lot.
mozzarella.
Hmm.
I don't think there's any out of the ordinary cheeses.
We've done provolone too before, right?
Uh,
I've done
I don't know if
provolone.
I've done provolone.
Smoked provolone's real good.
And John, the water pan will help, but it helps even more if you just put ice in that pan
Yeah,
and
that's what I was going to say.
put your pellet tube underneath the pan of ice, because then as that heat rises, the ice will absorb a good bit of that heat. That's one way to help keep it cooler inside your smoking vessel is an ice tray or an ice pan. Anthony, I don't know about burrata. I don't. That's probably not something I would smoke. I haven't tried something like that. I haven't tried fresh Monts. That would, in my mind, I guess that's going to have a similar consistency. I have not tried blue cheese. I have not tried gorgonzola.
Have we tried double Gloucester?
I can't remember if we've smoked any of that or not. But that's like a cheddar. That's similar to a cheddar.
I don't know if we've done Winsley either.
No, I haven't, and I haven't tried to smoke Parm either, or Parmigiano Reggiano, or any of those hard Italian cheeses. Yeah, Bandit, you would want to use your deflector plates, and I don't know, you might not. Instead of a deflector plate, I would probably put a round pan full of ice in it underneath. The Kamado is horrible. It's very hard to dissipate the heat from the pellet smoker in a Kamado grill. And also, you're going to want to take the top vent completely off, leave the bottom vent fully open, and I would put something about an inch thick underneath the dome lid where the dome doesn't close, where you can get air from the outside in. And you might be able to get away with it. I've struggled with Kamado.
The only way that
I've
I think that you would get it done with a Kamado is to move your heat source outside, run it through a dryer vent into a ice chest filled with ice, come out the other side of the ice chest with more dryer vent into the Kamado.
I don't
Then
know
you'd
if you'd
have a cold
to go to
smoker.
that. If you could run the pellet tube outside the Kamado and just use a dryer vent of some sort to feed it into the bottom vent, it might work. Norm, I have trouble getting the Wisconsin brick cheese here. It's only very randomly that I can find that. And
You're lucky. I can't find it at all.
the only reason I use that cheese, I like to use that cheese because it's a traditional cheese used to make the Detroit style pizzas. So anyway, I want to move on and get up here. Tanya, we'll bring you back here in a minute. Okay. I want to get to the next part. Yeah, well, bacon, yeah. I made Brunswick stew. So what you see here is 2 pounds of pulled pork, and it doesn't look very appealing here because this came out of a vacuum seal bag, and I just dumped it straight into my 5-quart Dutch oven. I didn't even bother breaking it up. I dump all of my. This is a dump stew, Jeff. I just dumped it all in there. So I started out, and I've got the recipe on a image at the end here. I've got 3 of the standard size. These are small, a little smaller than a fist size red skin potato, and we dice those and toss them in the Dutch oven. 1 onion, dice that guy into the Dutch oven. 12-ounce packages of frozen corn, frozen lima beans from the grocery store freezer section. 1 of each. And you can put whatever you want in here. I personally like to put okra in mine, but I catch flack from people for doing that. Okras, apparently, people have a love-hate relationship with okra. So, I didn't have any already, so I didn't use it. And 1 of the big 28-ounce can of diced tomatoes, I think this is like a 14 or 15 ounce can of chicken stock, and you don't use low sodium. If you do use low sodium chicken stock, you might need to add salt later. 1 bottle of whatever your favorite inexpensive barbecue sauce is. I wouldn't use expensive barbecue sauce in this. And if you want a spicier barbecue sauce, you can definitely do that. You can, whatever your preference in barbecue sauce is, get a bottle of it, and you're going to use the whole bottle. So make sure it's at least one of these 16 or 18 ounce bottles. Brown sugar. Dump it all in there. And as you can see, I'm really struggling here with my 5-quart Dutch oven. This reminded me I meant to buy a larger Dutch oven after the last time I made this, because I can barely get this recipe in my 5-quart Dutch oven. I'm going to get a 7-quart one before I do this again. A little bit of salt. I just added a teaspoon of salt because I know from past experience that that's about what I need in this recipe. A barbecue rub. I use a tablespoon of my homemade pork rub. You can use whatever, and that's got some salt in it as well. So use a tablespoon or more, or whatever you like, of whatever your favorite barbecue rub is. And about a 1/4 cup of my secret ingredient. I'm not going to tell you what's in the measuring cup.
Cheap bourbon.
So, as you can see, I'm about to bust the top off that Dutch oven. I couldn't put much more in there if I wanted to. So I kind of mix it up loosely a little bit. I'm not worried about getting it all completely mixed up yet. But I've got my Kamado Joe running. You want to have it running somewhere 250 to 275 for the first part of this cook. So I just set it on there uncovered. And the first part of this cook, I'm going to go for about 90 minutes at that temperature. And I'm going to stir that up. I'm going to stir it about every 20 minutes during this process. And you can kind of see here that it's starting to incorporate and loosen up as it heats up. And I don't remember at which stirring stage this was, but it was probably an hour in. I was probably an hour into it at this point. And I failed to take pictures on the second part of the cook. After I've been in for 90 minutes, I come out, I put the lid on the Dutch oven, and I run the temperature on the Kamado Joe up to about 325, where I get a strong simmer on this, and I'll let that go for about another 90 minutes. So this guy's on the grill for about 3 hours. And if you don't want to do this on the grill, you don't have to do it on the grill. You can do this on the stovetop. You can do it in your oven. If you want to do it in an oven, you know, you're going to want to run your oven at 300 to 325, or put it in a crock pot. You know, put it in your crock pot on high. All that works. I like to put mine out in the Kamado. That 90 minutes uncovered, stirring it occasionally, brings a little bit stronger smoke profile to this. I had some smoke in there from the barbecue already. That smoked pulled pork brings its own level of smoke to this, but the putting it back on the grill uncovered for a while gives you even more. So I've got the recipe here. I've not added this recipe to my Microsoft Word cookbook document yet, so I went and copied it off of my YouTube video. So if you want to screen capture this or come back to it later, or if you go to the Man Cave Meals YouTube channel and search for the Brunswick stew recipe, it's the one on there that's about a year old. And the secret ingredient's not listed here, and it is just a 1/4 cup of bourbon. And I don't know that makes any difference at all, but I like cooking with bourbon, so I toss some in there. If you feel like you need to add liquid to get a consistency that's more suitable to your own tastes, feel free to do that. And if you're going to add liquid to this, I would add chicken stock or something else that's a flavorful liquid rather than just adding water. If you have to add water to it, you might want to check for saltiness and check the flavor of it before you're done. Always taste what you're cooking. Find out if you need to add salt. That's why all these recipes say salt to taste. That means you need to be tasting it as you go. And if it tastes good, if it tastes fine, don't add any. If it tastes like it needs some, put in there whatever you need. Jeff, have you ever made Brunswick stew? I don't know if I recall.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yep. So, what do you think about Brunswick stew?
Oh, I like Brunswick stew.
Yep.
That's a good hearty meal, and it's Brunswick stew. The way that it came about was let's use everything that you got, a little of this, a little of that, and it's really not enough to make a meal of anything. So you throw it all together, and that's pretty much how Brunswick stew came about.
I brought Tanya back.
Kind of like the cottage pie and the shepherd's pie.
Yeah, Tanya's not a fan of the Brunswick stew. She but I want to send some to your parents, Tanya, and see if they like it. They won't.
My mom definitely will not.
Yeah.
And Dad, I don't know, but
Okay,
Mom's not a fan of it either.
Okay, well, my mom likes it, so I'm going to give her some.
Yeah.
Either that, or I'm going to be sick of Brunswick stew within the next month. But it's very good. I love making it. I really love making this stuff. It's that easy to make. The only thing that makes this difficult for me is my recipe's too big for my 5-quart Dutch oven. I need a bigger Dutch oven. And I went online and looked. I found a 7-quart enamel cast iron Dutch oven on Amazon this week for $59, and I've got my eye on it. But I need a bigger Dutch oven because it would be good for chili. Yeah, Tar Heel, I froze it.
Great.
I put it in these Rubbermaid 1.5 or 2 cup containers with lids, and it's in the freezer. I'm gonna take some off to work.
I want to do a shameless plug.
Yeah.
As I've told you guys, I've been doing some baking because I like baking. And I decided to try Mr. Setzler's white bread. So I made a loaf of Mr. Setzler's white bread yesterday, and that's what's left.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. If you guys haven't tried John's white bread recipe, it is so easy to make. It's about 3.5 hours start to finish.
Something like that. It's one of the quicker loaves that I make.
Yep.
But
it comes out really nice. It's real easy, and it's great sandwich bread. And you can use it as a base to make cinnamon raisin bread, whatever
It's
else
good.
you want to do with it. It's a real good bread, and I want to try this technique that I shared with John on our group chat about something Japanese do. They take a little bit of the flour and a little bit of the water, and they put it on heat, and they make it into a thick slurry, and then they add that to their bread, and it's supposed to make the bread last longer, and B, it's even fluffier than what this is. This was really fluffy bread.
Right.
I mean, this is very soft, very fluffy.
Very good. It's very reminiscent of your grocery store variety sandwich loaf bread. It's good, and it's easy to make, fun to make.
You can turn it into a butter bread. Just cut the top, throw some butter on before you put it in the oven.
Right.
But seriously, if you haven't tried it, you need to try it. It's very, very good. As you can see, it didn't last long.
I've made croutons with that bread also, and I've also made French toast with it.
Well, that's what I had this morning with it, was French toast. And my only complaint with it was I didn't allow it to soak long enough in the egg mixture because I was in a hurry, and I didn't have milk in my egg mixture.
The Alton Brown hack on that: slice your bread the night before and leave it out on the counter.
Yeah.
and let the bread go stale and let it dry. And then the next morning, put that bread in your custard and let it stay in there for 3 to 5 minutes, and you'll be amazed at the result.
Anthony, I just used it calls for 5x9. I just used a regular 5x9 nonstick bread pan.
When I make that, I use my Lodge. I think the Lodge is technically a 5x9, but it's a 4.5 by 8.5. It's the larger of the two models of bread pan. I like doing it in my cast iron loaf pan from Lodge, but any pan works fine. I've done it in my USA Pans pan, and I've done it in the Lodge cast iron as well. But that the one thing I do differently that Jeff didn't do this, and I'm hoping he'll try it next time maybe. Before I put that loaf in the oven, I spritz the top of it with water, and then I sprinkle on everything bagel seasoning on top of mine before it goes in the oven. Or you could put sesame seeds on it, or you could put poppy seeds, or anything you might like. Yeah. I like the everything bagel, specifically the Trader Joe's everything bagel seasoning. That's mine and Tanya's favorite of the various blends of everything bagel seasoning that's out there.
I think that's about as close as you can get to the taste of a New York all you can everything seasoned bagel.
It's good stuff, and it's cheap. I don't know, I hadn't bought one lately because I think I bought 4 of them the last time I bought some, because Trader Joe's is an hour away. So when I'm out of that, I stock up on it, because that's something I always want to have in my cabinet. But when you cook that thing's got dehydrated garlic in it, and when you cook that stuff, when that garlic in the oven, it makes your house smell beautiful. But that's a yeast. This is definitely a yeast bread, and your house is going to smell yeasty from that bread cooking when you cook that loaf anyway.
Oh, the house smells beautiful. I mean,
yeah,
guys, there is nothing, and girls, there is nothing better than the smell of bread baking in the oven.
That recipe, I'm going to call that my own recipe. It's a heavily modified version of somebody else's loaf, and I can't remember where I started on that one.
King Arthur is very close to what you have here.
Mine's not King Arthur. That one, I don't think that one is one where I started at King Arthur. I think I may have started that recipe from a white bread recipe from Joshua Weissman on YouTube. Maybe. I don't remember. It's been so long, but the flour ratio that he was using was not I know I did his loaf by his recipe to begin with, and it was too light. The bread didn't have enough structure. And also, Jeff made that loaf. I sent Jeff a sampling of the Sir Lancelot. So Jeff made that loaf with Lancelot, and I haven't made that with Lancelot yet. I typically make my sandwich bread stuff, or most of my breads, with the King Arthur bread flour, but the Sir Lancelot's a full percentage point higher on protein than their bread flour is.
Well, so, when you look at this bread, John, it almost looks kind of like a cake.
Yeah.
I mean,
you showed me the picture. The crumb on that bread is beautiful.
I mean,
it's exactly what it needs to look like. That's amazing. Yeah. I mean, look at that, Jeff.
You see, I didn't cut too well here, or somebody didn't cut too well. But anyway, the crumb on this is fantastic. I mean,
it's perfect.
You cannot have.
Yeah. It's not too dense, and it's not too tight or too airy. And you don't want a sandwich. A sandwich bread needs to have a little bit of what's the word I'm looking for here? A little bit of strength to it. You don't want it mashing flat when you pick it up.
No.
That's one of the reasons I have a problem with brioche. Brioche doesn't have the structure to it. It's just got the sweetness to it. But
what would have been good on this, and I didn't have any, would have been some I got Duke's mayonnaise, but some Braunschweiger. Yeah,
Braunschweiger. Yep. Well,
that would have been a good sandwich.
Yep, it would. So, well, we're at our hour mark, so I don't want to run too long tonight. I'm tired, and I want to get wound down early tonight. Tanya, do we have any questions or comments that we need to go back here and look at? If I missed
No,
anything that somebody needs to...
No, I kept a pretty good eye on it.
So, okay. Awesome.
We do have one question. Anthony wanted to know if it was the Kamado Joe white sandwich bread.
Anthony, I'd have to go back and look because it's been so long.
It's under Man Cave Meals.
I don't think this is the same loaf that I made under Kamado Joe. Go to the Man Cave Meals YouTube channel and search sandwich bread, and it'll pop up. Let me go have a look if I can make sure I can find that there. That's
where I got it from.
Jeff, I could have sworn this is one of the ones we did when
we did everything but white bread.
It's on the Man Cave Meals channel. It's called White Sandwich Bread. And that's 4 years ago. So I did that video during the pandemic. But that's the loaf. It's on the Man Cave Meals channel. That sourdough bread that's right below it there. Actually, I've got a
pretzel bread.
There's a playlist in there that's my favorite bread and pizza, and the pretzel buns for burgers are on there. That Kamado Joe white sandwich bread, I see that video in this list, so it's similar to that one. I don't think it's the exact same recipe. Those dinner rolls that are down there are really good too. They're like Parker House rolls. They're delicious. So anyway, yeah. Either one of those recipes would be good, but get the more current one because I'd have to go back and compare the two to see if they're the same, and I don't think they are. I think that one from the Kamado Joe is old enough that it's not. I think I've modified since then.
That's what I'm
bad about. I don't leave recipes alone. I like for my recipes to evolve, and that's something I do that Tanya despises. I'll make something that Tanya loves, and I'll fart around with it, and she won't be happy with it after I make a change to it.
I'm like, don't change it, damn it.
Change is not always good, right, Tanya?
It's not. I know.
It's not.
It's like any recipe I get from somebody.
Especially if he forgets what he did the first time.
No, if I tweak if the recipe has made it into my Word document cookbook, if I make a change to it, I make notes there of what I did. I do that.
And that's the if it made it into that Word document.
I know. I need to update that cookbook because it's not something I'm ever going to publish, but I put my go-to stuff in there. And most of it's in there, but I've probably got 15 or 20 recipes that need to be added to it. So.
Yeah, I am tired, Jeff. You have to understand, Thursday is like my last lecture day of the week. And on Thursday, it's also my machine learning class. So usually I'm pretty toasted. Yeah.
I feel your pain.
Jeff, what would you like to do next week? I'm only going to try to do one thing next week. And next week, probably what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a steak and another steak sauce because I've got...
I have to do a turkey, but I can't show it, so that's out.
Tanya and I are going to do. We're going out of town next weekend, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time in the man cave next week. But I'm going to do. I'm going to continue my steak sauce series. So I'm going to cook another steak. I haven't decided which sauce I'm going to do to go along with it. I'm going to get up in these people's faces about steak sauces, Jeff. I'm going to. Oh, I need to. I need to save it. Did I save the? Oh, I don't know if I saved this clip or not. I posted my steak sauce thing in my cooking schools group on Facebook, and I talked about the fact that a lot of backyard grillers get up in their high and mighty pulpits when you talk about steak sauces, and they say that if your steak's properly cooked, you don't need a sauce. And it turns out that I got to find that comment now, because it made my day when the chef that teaches this class came into the post and said everything needs a sauce. He says, well, and he went on to say, oh, here it is.
I don't necessarily know that I completely agree with that, but I'll let it go.
Here he goes. He says, you made my favorite. I can't think of anything that doesn't need a sauce. Anyone that says otherwise can't make a good sauce. that might be a lot of truth.
That might be a true statement there.
That made my day when he made that comment on my post in his group.
Which sauce did you do? The pepper sauce?
The au poivre, the bourbon cream sauce. Yeah.
Yep.
And I outlined what I did that was traditional and what was non-traditional in the post. I made an extensive post here about the process of that steak cook, and I showed my pictures, and I got what I expected. There's a lot of people in that thread that commented about steaks don't need sauce, and I think people are raised believing that. I guess it's okay if you don't want steak sauce, but I really think you're selling yourself short if you're not at least willing to try some of the options you have when it comes to sauces on steaks. And Chef Todd, all of his stuff, when he's preparing any meal you watch him prepare, there's going to be a sauce of some sort on one or more of the items that are going on the plate.
Well, here's the thing. I read an article just this week on the tasting table where they were, throwing out that, oh, you don't need sauce on steak crap. And I was sitting here going, yeah, you do. I like sauce on steak. Of course, I also like well-done steaks. So that automatically invalidates any thoughts I would have about steaks, since, you can't have a well-done steak and be taken seriously. But at any rate, I like sauce on steak. I think it's good stuff.
Well, Tanya does like well-done steak, and in the beginning, I used to rail on Tanya about that, and I finally came to the conclusion that instead of trying to change Tanya, I said I'm going to take it upon myself to learn to make the best possible well-done steak that can be made, and I've gotten good at it. Tanya won't buy a steak anywhere on the road anymore. I've learned how to cook well-done steaks to where she thinks the well-done steak, and it's not sous vide. Sous vide is not the answer, and I'm not going to get into it because I know nobody's interested in cooking well-done steaks. If you want secrets of cooking a great well-done steak, send me a private message, and I will tell you how I do mine for her. But in reality, I can tell you it's the same way I do my own steak. I sear the steak, and then I finish it over indirect heat. And I get hers off about the time the internal temperature of that steak hits about 158. And I'll let it rest for 10 minutes, and it's good for her. Tanya does not like any pink left behind in the meat. And The trick to making the best well done steak is finding that point and not going any above it. You got to stop. You don't want it. You don't want carryover cooking to take that steak to 170 or 175.
So,
Finishing it,
Ton,
getting it to finish at 165 is where it needs to be.
And
you wouldn't like the way I like steak, would you? You walk the cow by the table,
nope.
cut off
Yeah.
a steak, slap it on the butt, and put steak on the
No,
plate, call it a day.
you wipe its butt and run it by the stove.
Yeah,
That's-
no, I don't like
I
that.
grew
As a
up-
matter of fact, it's really disgusting for me. Like when people are eating steak and I'm also trying to enjoy the steak and their
Yeah.
steak is over there still mooing. I just can't look at their plates or them while they're eating the steak. I have to like
I've witnessed
keep
this,
myself
guys. It's a
distracted.
problem.
Otherwise, it will
is.
like be like, no steak.
Okay, well,
I
remind
grew
me
up
if
eating
we ever
well-done
sit down to
steak.
break bread, it won't be over steak.
I grew up eating well done steak. I didn't know that I had another option until I started cooking steak on my own, and that was it. I was an adult by the time I had a medium rare steak because my dad cooked well done steaks. That's what we served if we were fortunate enough to have enough money to have steak on the table on a Saturday night meal at my house when I was growing up. It was well done. My dad, it made his day if he was going to get to go to a market that used to exist in the town I grew up in. He would go get a sirloin and he would have the guy would cut it for him, and it was an inch. My dad got an inch and a quarter thick. That was where he wanted to be, and he'd bring that thing home and he'd cook all the flavor out of it, and we'd sit down at the table with our A1 steak sauce, and we loved every minute of that. I got no complaints about it, but I do have the honor of being able to say that before my dad died, my dad loved medium rare steak. He didn't. I don't know if my dad had ever tried it actually. And when I would cook, I got both of my parents eating medium rare steak, and they loved it. And that my dad went to his grave enjoying medium rare steak, and my mom's still enjoying medium rare steak. But you just gotta get
But
people
not
to
your
try.
wife.
But
And he
not my
would
wife.
try, just
That's
so you
okay.
guys know, he would
That's
try.
okay.
He would
No.
bring it up here and he would be like,
No,
oh, it's still pink. And he'd be
I
like,
didn't intentionally
I
undercook
cooked
it.
to the internal temperature of XYZ.
Jeff, let
and
me tell you something. You'll pull a steak off that you think might be completely done, and there might be a place in it where it's still a little pink. And sometimes I have had to put 20 or 30 seconds in the microwave to finish up something I've cooked, and that's okay. But Tanya, you've got to cut me that much slack because I am trying. It's not
Well,
something
I know you're trying, but I really do think that he was trying very hard to convert
No,
me. And I'm just,
no.
there are some
Oh.
things that I just will not be.
Children.
No, I did have to explain one thing to Tanya. Whenever I was doing a reverse seared steak, that red on the outside edge is not pink steak. It's not undercooked steak. It's the smoke ring that got on there. You know how you'll put a 2-inch thick or even a 3-inch thick fillet on for a reverse sear? That thing's going to develop a smoke ring just like a pork butt does during that time in the low temperature part of the cook. So anyway, Brewster, I have not. It's something I probably would want to look at though. The molcajete. Jeff, have you done that?
Nope.
Jeff, you're probably exposed to more Mexican food than I am.
Nope, never done that. Don't have any idea what it is.
It's something I'm familiar with it, but I've not done it before. But
If
it's
Janice was on, she could tell us what it was.
yeah, Janice. I'll have to talk to Janice. Janice is my go-to for everything Latino.
And it may be shoe leather, and I may smother it with A1.
No,
but
Tar
you know
Heel.
what?
It's not
my
shoe leather.
steak.
It's not. It's not got to that point. I'm able to get one I'm able to cook it the way she likes it.
here's the whole thing that people don't understand is they think that a well done steak is exactly that, shoe leather, but depending on who cooks it, it's really not. Now,
Yeah.
John will produce a steak that is very tender. I could cut it with a fork. It's delicious.
It just takes practice, guys, to learn to cook that. It's not so when on my end, I've got I've got a wide spectrum of what's acceptable to me. I'm good if it's a little bit on the rare side. I'm also good if it's all the way up to medium. I'm perfectly happy with a medium steak that finished at 145. I've got no problem whatsoever with that. Medium steak to me is just fine. So I've got a window to work with. The window on the upper end at well done is non-existent. You've got to not let that meat go past 165. Yeah. If you do, that's when the shoe leather thing comes into play. That meat will be dry, but I've looked at these things. I've cooked steaks, and they're not. Granted, they're not as juicy as a medium rare steak or a medium steak, but they're different people have different tastes, and I have learned during the time I've been in social media, which has been a while now, don't criticize people for their choices. It's not worth it.
Not a
Enjoy
hill
what
to
you
die
like.
on.
Yeah, enjoy what you like, but don't criticize other people for what they like. Just scroll on by. It's just
All
not
right,
worth it.
John, it's past the bewitching hour, buddy.
Yeah, it is. We got to go. So, Jeff, we'll get together. We got several things I want to talk about over the weekend and next week. Some of the stuff we talked about before the stream, and we'll figure out what we're going to do next week. I don't know what it's going to be yet, but like I said, I'm probably going to do a steak sauce. Jeff, do you want to do a steak sauce? Do you want to make a steak sauce of some sort? If not, that's fine.
Uh, Trying to think if I got any steaks out in the freezer right now. Beef has just been ridiculously high.
I know I can't afford it either. I got this whole strip loin this week for $6.99 a pound though, which is
Good price.
unheard of. It's at the U.S. Food
Say,
Chef store. I bought an 11
I don't
pounder.
think I have any steak in the freezer. I mean,
Okay,
beef
well that's fine.
beef has just been out of.
Well, whatever you decide to cook, we'll talk about it next week.
Well, what I decide to cook, we can't talk about next week, John.
Well, that's true. I forgot about that. So hang around here for a second, and we'll talk to you guys next week. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we will see you next Thursday.